On this podcast, you're going to learn the 5 elements of a great business, the 5 organizational disciplines that every business needs to be disciplined with, and the 5 constituents to consider. You'll learn all this from Monte Wyatt, who is certified with the best of the best. He is a John Maxwell certified leadership coach, a Marshall Goldsmith certified executive leadership coach, a Jeffrey Gitmer certified advisor, and he's a Hall of Fame executive coach. He wrote the book AddingZEROS and currently has 35 facilitators in North America who are teaching his concepts. Get ready for Monte Wyatt.
Monte, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, real happy to have you. If you could start off, just give us a little bit of background on yourself and some of your own entrepreneurial journey that got you to where you are today.
You bet. Well, I'm an Iowa farm boy. My family farms just south of Waterloo, and I went to Iowa State in agricultural business and actually spent 14 years in the ag chemical world. And through that time, I was in sales and sales training, sales management, marketing management. Lived all across the country, 5 or 6 different places and 5 or 6 different roles. But I was traveling way too much. So after 14 years of that, I said, it's time to find something different. And I got connected with a franchise broker. And actually, I got into business coaching. And so it was just very interesting in that process. You know, they brought all kinds of businesses that said, you know, what do you want? Do you want a storefront? Do you want employees? All this fun stuff. And I found one that really matched my career and what I wanted to do. And it was all about helping organizations, executives, business owners, CEOs. And so for the last 16 years, I have been helping CEOs and their executive teams bring clarity to how they lead and manage their organizations.
That's great. And in the background, you've got AddingZEROS on your window. And can you tell us a little bit about AddingZEROS? I believe that's your book.
So yes, we've got the organization that I lead is called AddingZEROS, and we help again CEOs all around the world. We've got 35 facilitators that work within AddingZEROS brand, and that's a wonderful thing. We're in countries that I never thought I'd be in around the world: Morocco and Indonesia and India and South Africa, and of course the United States, Canada. But the fun thing is it all came about because of a book we launched 2 years ago, Pulling Profits Out of a Hat, and we did everything we could with marketing and getting publicity out there. We even got bestseller on Wall Street Journal, USA Today. So that's been a fun ride getting the book out there, but also the biggest thing is impacting so many people around the world with that content.
So you go from ag chemical and say, hey, too much travel. You look at some franchises, you get into business coaching. Like, talk to us more about the segue in your entrepreneurial journey from, I'm going to do this business coaching franchise, to now you have you're not a franchise, but you have 35 people who are out there teaching the concepts from the book you wrote. How does that happen?
You know, I think the biggest thing that helped me in my journey, it was constant learning. I know for the last at least 14 years, I spent a month a year going to conferences, reading books, going to conferences, implementing what I learned. So many people, they read books, but they aren't implementing what they learned, or they aren't implementing what they learned at the conference. And I think that's the biggest thing for myself, but also for the best entrepreneurs out there. They're constantly learning. They're constantly seeing, how can I grow to grow the rest of my business? And this is a belief that I teach. This is a belief that I help organizations develop. The leader of a business is the ceiling of the business. And so if the ceiling isn't being pushed higher, the business or team can't be pushed higher. So that's the power. The more that we implement, the more that we think through things, that's how we're going to grow.
And what do you find to be often the restrainer for the leader being the ceiling of the business and needing to push them higher? What's most, or one of the most common things that you've seen that's a restrainer for that?
Well, I'm going to put it in one word: control. They think they need to control everything, or they want to control everything. Where, to me, the biggest job of an executive team is to teach their team, their direct reports, to think. It's yes, there's a lot of responsibility of a CEO and their executive team and business owners and their leadership team. They have those responsibilities, absolutely. But if they aren't teaching their team how to think, how to make better decisions, how to grow themselves, everything's going to be reliant on their shoulders. I just got off the phone call prior to our conversation here with uh, a great business. They've grown, but the husband and wife who's driving the business, I mean, they're a very good sized business. They do have team members, but they want control of everything. And
Why is that a problem, Monty? Like what happens that, hey, if I want control, people are going to do it right because I've done it right for a while and I know the right way. Like, what's problematic about that?
So let me share with you the definition that I've created as a great business. A great business is one that's sustainable, predictable, stable, consistent, and has an emotional connection. What I mean by sustainable means that the business will outlast us. Okay. If everything has to go through me, the business can't outlast me. If I die today, the business is over because everything's reliant on me. We've got to eliminate the ego. We got to make it about I'm here to create a sustainable business so every employee has a job for the future, has income for the future, that the next generation is being impacted by everything that we're doing. If we are that good of a business, it should last a very long time. And it's about building a business, not about building a job. And so, yes, as a CEO, you're responsible for financials, you're responsible for growing the business, absolutely. But you're responsible for ensuring that business continues. That's sustainability. And again, consistency is part of that definition. If everything has to go through one person, you're trying to control the consistency. We have to train people. We have to have our best practices. We have our ways of duplicating the business so it's not reliant on any person. We want people to have their personalization to it, absolutely. But we can't have it reliant on a person because every day people leave, people change, people pass away. We've got to build a business that's sustainable.
Monty, I'd love for you to repeat that again. I couldn't write fast enough, but you said sustainable, predictable.
So sustainable means that it will outlast us. Predictable means that because of the actions that we're doing, we can predict our future. Yep, the world's going to change, but we know when we do action A, we get result Y, whatever it is.
Sure.
The third word is stable. Stable is all about employee retention, engagement, having the right team members, and how are we developing those team members so we have stability. Just using this example, and I'll finish the definition. We all probably have our favorite restaurant because we have a favorite wait staff. So we go the night that the wait staff works. Well, if the wait staff is no longer there because they're treating us differently than other wait staff, well, we're going to start going somewhere else. So it's not about the restaurant, it's about the person. Well, what's our process, how we want every person that's in the wait staff to treating our customers? That's part of that stability, and that creates that next word, which is consistency. So consistency is about how are we managing the business? How are we managing our processes? And the last words are emotional connection. Internally and externally, our employees, our clients, our customers, they love who we are and why we do what we do. So a great business is sustainable, predictable, stable, consistent, and has an emotional connection.
That's fantastic. I love that thread there. So I want to come back to looking through some of your background. You seem to have some experience and certified with John Maxwell. Can you tell me what kind of influence he's had on you, and maybe what your favorite book is of his? Because I know there's a lot of really good ones.
As I said, one of my biggest things that I'm proud of in my life is how I've learned from the best in the world. So John Maxwell's one of them, Jeffrey Gitomer, Marshall Goldsmith. I spend a lot of time with experts in the business field, and that's how I continue to grow and building all those things. But one of the things that the book that I love from John Maxwell is Becoming a Person of Influence. And, this has led to some of my teachings. There is a difference between leadership and management. The world talks about leadership and management as if they are the same, meaning that because I'm a manager, that means I'm a leader. Well, that's not always true. The best managers may not have good leadership skills, and you don't have to be a manager to be a leader. Every person in the company should be a leader. And here is how I define the two words, and I'd love for us to talk more about it. I define leadership as it creates passion and focus.
Okay.
Management creates competence and productivity. I believe that both leadership and management are needed more than ever today, whether it's because of COVID or the economic situation that we're in, or just the unknowns that the world's in. We need passion and focus, but we also need competence and productivity.
I love that.
So if I'm a manager, my biggest job is to ensure that my direct reports know how to do their job and that they're productive at their job. So many times that's not the case. Even as a manager, maybe they're just reading reports, or they're not focused on training their people. They're just focused on telling them what they didn't do right. Well, did you train them to do it right? Is your process right? Do you have a process? And again, you lead people, you manage processes. So many people are afraid to be a manager because they don't want to be a micromanager. Well, now they're doing no management. I just love it when I say, oh, so tell me what your management style is. Oh, I let my people do what they do. I give them free rein. That's not management. That's no management. And so there is such a thing as good management. What are your routines of management? What are your routines of leadership? And they are different behaviors. And I think there's a lot of places we're just overcomplicating both of them. We've got to make sure that we get clear on how are we leading our people by casting a vision and getting excited about why we do what we do and where we're headed. And this is what you're responsible for. Let me teach you to be the best in your job. And I want to make sure that you're successful.
Yeah, I love that, Monte. And to dive in a little bit deeper, like you were talking, I'd love to have a conversation about this as well. And Rich, I'm reminded about some of the training we had years ago, 20 years ago, that when you had an employee or a team member that wasn't performing, one of the first questions you had to ask yourself as a manager or leader of that person is, are they not competent or are they not committed? And we used to look at the graph of competency versus commitment and say, okay, where are they? Are they very competent but not committed? Are they very committed but not competent? And if you take that graph of competency and commitment and lay over the where are your leadership versus management skills are, if they're really committed, but they're not very competent, you may be a really good leader, but you're not being a very good manager.
I love what you just said. And everything you just said is about the employee.
Yeah.
And if somebody is not performing, I want to add a couple questions to that.
Yeah.
One is, did I train them correctly?
Correct.
If I'm the manager, did I train them correctly on our process? Well, the second question is my process right?
Correct.
The third question is, are they willing to follow my process? That gets to your commitment. Because if I've trained them and the process is right, but they're not willing to follow my process, this isn't the right place for them.
Yeah, and Monte, I think where I was going to with that, to what you just said, is if they're competent but not committed, as a leader, as a manager, my leadership skills are probably lacking. I've trained them really well, but I'm not really motivating them and influencing them in the right direction. Whereas if they're really committed because they love the company, they love the culture, they love the cause, they love the passion, but they're not competent, I got to look at myself in the mirror and say, am I being a good manager? Am I really giving them the competency skills and the processes of what's going on? I never really layered the management versus leadership on top of the competency and commitment graph. So I really love that look, Rich. Does that resonate with you?
Yes, two totally separate skills, right? In leadership and management, and looking at them totally separately. I think that's a neat look. You had mentioned, Monty, about the routines. I'd love for you to expand on that. You said something about what are your leadership routines or your management routines. Can you give us an example of like what you would call a successful leadership routine and a successful management routine, and just kind of compare and contrast those routines?
Absolutely. And there will be overlap within the two. And I love that you asked that question. So if I'm managing a team, I don't care what level of the company I'm at, I've got direct reports, I'm managing them. Again, my role is to make sure they're competent and productive. One of the routines I suggest is at least a once a month one-on-one with your direct reports. Even if they've been with you 25 years, you still should have a one-on-one with them. In that one-on-one, we are helping them be successful. We're not there to just beat them down. We're there to, so what's working for you? What isn't working? What do we need to behave differently? Those are leadership routines by asking those questions. What's working? What's not getting the outcome that you want, and how can we improve it? Those can be leadership routines because we're looking at their behaviors. Management in that one-on-one, that's a formalized setting of how we bring conversation. But also in that one-on-one, I'm checking, okay, this is what success looks like for your position. Tell me where you're at. And what are you doing to correct that? So this one-on-one could be 30 minutes long where, yep, you're seeing what their results are and what they're going to do differently, but you're also building their confidence in there. The routine of leadership is, hey, you're doing a great job. I'm proud of you. This is exciting where you're taking it. Leadership is also, what are you doing to grow your personal skills? You know, your time management or your focus or your prioritization or whatever it might be. So there are overlapping activities. And so many times people, if I'm just the manager and I have my one-on-one, I'm just there, well, let's talk about your numbers. Let's talk about your results. Let's talk about your benchmarks. Well, you're not hitting it. We got to change that. So do better. Well, I'm going to go back. The 80s management style that we all probably saw. I remember I was a sales rep. My manager, well, I shouldn't say it, my manager, but there was a manager within our area that he would pound on the dashboard. You know, that's not leadership. That's fear. Fear-based management does not work. And that's why this leadership side of developing people, creating passion and focus in others is so important. And we have to help those that we work with every day, help them see how well they're doing and that, hey, you've got this. You can do some great things. I really believe that through COVID, there's probably more mental challenges than we've probably seen in our lifetime or we'll ever see again in our lifetimes. And I think one of the roles, and managers can have that too, but one of the roles as a manager is to help our team through that. And it's getting them to talk about, well, let's talk about how are you focusing your belief system? How are you focusing your energy? What is your self-talk? That's leadership conversation right there.
Monty, is it fair to characterize the leadership conversation as about developing the passion and focus in others, while the management conversation is really you're using your passion and focus to employ accountability on results and numbers on others. You're not really focused on their passion and focus. It's your passion and focus. You're kind of doing to people versus on the leadership side, you're doing it with them and you're grooming it in them. Is that a fair characterization?
You know, I want to add to that because I think you're dead on, but I have to lead myself before I can lead others. And so I say that in a sense, if I'm not able to lead myself, I've got to be able to have that passion and focus myself as well to give it to someone else. Because again, I'm the ceiling of energy when I'm talking to that person. So I have to have that passion and focus to instill passion and focus on them. And then my role is, as you said, we got to focus on, do you have the skills to complete the results that you're after? Well, let me help you build those skills. That's the competency. Well, are you getting the results that you wanted? Let's talk about how can you get from A to B? Do you need greater direction? Do you need more clarity on something? So absolutely. But I think this is a statement that I think so many people don't get. People are our team is a mirror of ourselves. Okay. So if I'm not communicating well, I'm not leading well, people do what they see. They don't do what they're told. They do what they see. And so if I'm not being a good leader, I mean, leadership, there's a lot of negative leadership out there as well. That still influences people.
Yep.
That's why my definition is passion and focus, because we've got to have passion and focus to influence people.
Yeah, love that, Monty. And it's interesting what you said earlier. The leader of the business is the ceiling of the business, and your people are a mirror of you. But they're probably not at a level higher than you because you're kind of the ceiling. So if you're not displaying what they should be seeing, that's going to be a problem for that passion and drive in the business. And it also brings me back to I want to bring us all the way back full circle to where Rich started, which is the name of your book, and pulling profits out of a hat. And I want to just kind of dive into that for a second, because I when I hear pulling profits out of a hat, I think it's a very catchy title. It makes me think of a rabbit being pulled out of a hat and go, here's profits. But the reality is, to create sustainability, predictability, stability, consistency, emotional connection, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of investments before you actually pull the profits out. So talk to us about the title of your book, what it really meant to you, and what does the book really talk about in terms of how do you really get profits out of the hat?
It's interesting. I've actually had a magician for years as a client. And what I saw him do over years is he put hours and hours and hours and hours and weeks into practicing to make a 5-minute trick work. And I think it's the same. We can all remember Steve Jobs getting up on stage, and it looked like magic of how he presented and the product that they talked about. But they put years of effort into creating the iPhone or his presentation. He would practice for weeks on that presentation so it would go so well. That's the whole concept. Business should be like magic, because we've done all the hard work and it looks like magic to the customer because it just happens so well. How we create that magic in business is through organizational discipline. Okay. There's personal discipline and there's organizational discipline. Personal discipline is how I manage my time, my money, my resource, whatever it might be. Organizational discipline is this is the way we do things as a company. The book talks about 5 disciplines that every organization has to get right. The 5 disciplines are strategy, business development, people, execution, and mission. And the interesting thing is, to truly grow a business, you have to have all 5. You think about that.
Those 5 again, real quick, Monty?
Absolutely. Discipline of strategy.
Thank you.
And I can explain more about each here in a moment. Second one is discipline of business development.
Got it.
Discipline of people.
Got it.
discipline of execution,
Thank you.
and discipline of mission.
Yeah, please elaborate.
So the discipline of strategy is all about how are we going to win long term. You know, they all relate to that definition. A great strategy creates sustainability. Okay. But in a strategy, we have to recognize, how is our business leverageable? How is our business scalable? How is it marketable? And what is the opportunity that we're choosing to in the market? So these are some internal choices that we're making. A part of strategy is long-term goal setting of where are we headed as a business. So many businesses think they have a strategy, but their strategy is based on a product or a service. Strategy has to be about the company. That's a discipline of strategy. The discipline of business development, there's a lot of depth there. We could spend days on it, but discipline of business development is all about marketing, sales, and customer service. It's all about that customer. How are we getting in front of them with the right message? Our core customer, what are we promising them? How are we making sure that our customer service, and everyone is in customer service, everyone is in marketing, everyone is in sales. It's how do we understand who our customer is and how we interact and communicate with them? What's the value that we're bringing to them? Discipline of people is all about developing leaders in ourselves and in others, but it's also about organizations have to take ownership for their talent development. Okay, I want to give an example here because I think this is fantastic. Have you ever been to a container store? It's a large box store, container store. The average retailer will train their newest employees maybe 4 to 5 hours. Okay. In the first year, a full-time employee at the container store is trained for 400 hours because they want them to be the best resource for their customer. It isn't, well, here's your phone, here's your keys, go do your job. It's, I want to teach you everything that we have to teach you, how to ask questions, how to present our product, how to show them everything that we have to offer. That's onboarding of a new employee, but there's also ongoing development of our employees to be the best in their job. Organizations have to own talent development. And the last part of the people discipline is recruitment. We have to be able to attract the right people that match who we are. So that's the discipline of people. The discipline of execution is all about processes and management. Okay, this is creating, I had a gentleman, this has been a couple of years ago, we were talking about processes in their organization. He said, well, we don't want to be corporate. And I said, what do you mean you don't want to be corporate? Well, we don't want to be told how to do things. I said, well, time out. Let's pretend you have 10 customer service agents. Do you want all 10 to be treating the customer differently? Well, no. Okay, well, if you don't want to use the word process, then let's use best practice. It doesn't matter to me, but we need each customer service to treat the customer the same way. I don't like customer service when you call them where they're just a robot. Yes, there's certain questions they should be asked, but when they have to read every word, we haven't trained them well enough. We've just taught them how to read. We want to teach people how to treat the customer. And that's just a simple example of process, but sales is another process. So many companies hire great salespeople, but they don't have an organizational sales process. So processes are our best practices. How do we get the results that we want? What's working best for us to take people down, whatever process, whether it's manufacturing or customer service or sales or, fulfillment, whatever it might be. And the discipline of mission, and I want to start, a discipline of mission is not about a mission statement. I'll be provocative here. I mentioned 80s management. I think a mission statement is, again, back in the 80s management world. When I think of discipline of mission, it's about our purpose as a company, as an organization. Why do we do what we do? A mission statement is far off. you look at the employee base of the world today, people aren't as loyal as they used to be when we all started in our careers 25 years ago. They aren't loyal. And so that purpose, part of discipline of mission is our purpose. So every day, this is why I do what I do. This is what gets me through the challenging parts of the day, or this is why I got out of bed to do what I do, because I have a clear purpose. Another piece of the discipline of mission is about our core values. It's interesting. I ask all kinds of people every day, describe your culture of your organization, and get everybody's words, or they might say, well, it's whatever my manager's attitude is that day, or whatever mindset they're in, or whatever emotion they're expressing. Culture is determined by our core values. Core values should be behavioral, and we have to define them and teach them to our team so they know how to behave. I look at it this way. Do either of you play any cards or board games?
Sure.
What do you play?
We've played a lot of poker in our day.
That's
Poker.
right.
Wonderful. Well, let's just pretend the three of us are going to play poker, but we're playing by different rules. How long will that game of poker last?
Not long. In my experience, John throws beers and he kind of stomps off with extra cards.
Yeah, in my experience, Rich will call bunions to get the real rules down, make sure we're doing it right.
I'll just say all in and be done with it.
Business is just a game, but people don't know the rules. In so many businesses, core values are our rules of how we're going to play our game of business. Just like poker, I'm going to get mad, so I'm going to throw my beer. I'm going to throw the cards and walk out because I'm now mad at you. That happens every day in so many businesses because they don't know the rules of how we're to behave to each other. Yep. And you might say, well, that's common sense. You should not. We got to define it. We absolutely have to define who we are. And those core values and definitions of those behaviors need to be us. I've seen a lot of companies, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I want to say this, that if you have a core value that it is honesty and integrity, I'm sorry, that's a terrible core value. I want you to be honest and have integrity, but that doesn't tell me what behavior I should have. None of us want to be called that we aren't honest. None of us want to be said that we don't have integrity. If the core value is we do what we say we will do, that's a behavior. Because somebody will say, well, what's honesty and integrity? Well, you do what you say you're going to do. Wonderful. Then let's make that our core value. So every day, if I say I'm going to get you something by 5 o'clock, I'm going to get it to you by 5 o'clock. If I say I'm going to call you at 9:30, I call you at 9:30. But we use too vague of core values that we don't know what the behavior is. We don't know what the real game is. Core values should be used for feedback, for hiring, for firing, for development. So each of those disciplines relate to that definition of a great business. Great strategy creates sustainability. Great business development creates predictability. Great discipline of people creates stability. And that's the power. Great discipline of execution is consistency, and great mission discipline is emotional connection.
So Monte, I want to bring back to, I'm usually on the financial side of things, analytically looking at those numbers. Rich is on the leadership development side of things, and that's how we kind of connect. And two things kind of keep popping out at me, right? One is the title of your book, which is Pulling Profits. Not building leadership, it's pulling profits. So I see dollar signs there. And then the name of your company is AddingZEROS. So I think financially, again, I'm like, oh, I'm going to learn how to add zeros here. And one of the things that struck us in a conversation we had recently with Randy Soma, one of our guests, was that corporate America right now, think about any publicly traded stock. They're worried about next quarter's returns. CEOs don't perform to the board's expectations for this year's budget, they get fired. There's a different world going on in the financial side of things that if I'm an executive or an entrepreneur who's trying to add zeros, I think what you're saying here is building that foundation so you can add zeros, you have to have all of these disciplines and these 5 words of sustainable, predictability, and stable, consistency, emotional connection. You got to build that, but it takes time. To your point, it's not magic. It takes time to build. It looks like magic when you get there, but there's a long road to getting there. How do you address the current climate of profits now? I can't wait until 3 years from now. I'll lose my job. We'll lose the company. We got to figure it out now. How do you address those companies?
So there's a number of things I want to share here. First of all, adding zeros is in every aspect of our business. It is absolutely revenue and profit, but it's also morale, it's engagement, it's acquisition of new customers. We add zeros everywhere. If I don't add zeros in customer acquisition, revenue can't grow. If I don't add zeros in team engagement, we're not retaining our employees. So we add zeros everywhere. Financials are a part of the discipline of execution. When we execute on our plan, we will hit our financials. At the same time, we might be executing great, but we're treating our people terribly. So the concept that I want to get across here is you have to balance people and process. You have to balance people and productivity. So productivity being our financials. So yeah, we have to grow we have to sell more this month. Okay, great. Well, how are we developing our team to make that happen? Is it a skill set for competency that we have to create? Is it motivation? Is it passion? Is it focus? So you are exactly right. It takes leadership and management to grow our financials, and we have to balance those two, because it isn't just flipping a switch that we're going to go get more sales. Well, I got to look at my sales team. Well, why are they getting the results that they're getting? Mm-hmm. Why aren't they getting better results? Are they not asking the right questions? Are they not consistent in following a process? Are we not fulfilling consistently? There's deeper reasons. Financials are a surface issue. There are always deeper issues that are causing lack of numbers, lack of results.
Yep.
Now, I want to add one more thing if I can. And, I shared there's 5 disciplines you have to get right.
Yep.
And I love you said it. This is what's going on in the world. We're very focused on financials. And I do think the business world has probably gotten a bad rap because they are too focused on financials.
Absolutely.
There are actually 5 constituents that every business has to satisfy. Okay. Yep. And the financials only reflect one of those constituents. So, and actually they touch all of them in a sense, but they are deeper. The first constituent I'll talk about is the company.
Yep.
We have to be making sure, again, we're satisfying the company long-term. So we do have to be profitable. We have to make the right decisions, but we also have the right strategy. We're making the right changes. Mm-hmm. The second constituent is the customer. We have to be satisfying the customer or they're going to go somewhere else. The third constituent is we have to satisfy the team. If we aren't keeping the team satisfied, they're certainly not going to serve the customer, mm-hmm. but we're also going to have high turnover. The next constituents are stakeholders. Stakeholders can be our investors. They can be our board. They can be the executive team or the owner. The last constituent that we have to satisfy is our communities. So what I mean by that is, hey, if we are a sustainable company, we want to make sure our community knows that. How are we volunteering in the community? How are we on boards? How are we helping out those less fortunate by volunteering at different events, whatever it might be? That is a constituent as well. So when a company only focuses on financials, a lot of time the other constituents are getting hurt.
Yeah, that's great.
So we have to keep in mind and balance those.
Yeah, earlier when you gave us the 5 words of sustainability, predictability, stability, consistency, emotional connection, what were those 5 called?
Disciplines?
No. So 5 disciplines were strategy, biz dev,
yep.
people, execution, mission. What were the 5 other words? What was the
category?
That's
the definition of a great business.
Great business. Okay.
A great business is sustainable, predictable, stable, consistent, and has an emotional connection.
Okay.
You have to have those 5 disciplines, and we have to satisfy the 5 constituents.
Monty, can you expand on the company part of it? I'm having a hard time decoupling in my mind stakeholders, which includes profit, and then the company, which includes a team. Like, I'm having a hard time on where a company is unique. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. Oftentimes when businesses continue to get bigger, the business becomes so big, nobody can stop it. Okay. It's bigger than one person. It's bigger than a team. If I'm no longer here, things are going to keep going. Whatever I was responsible for, it's just going to continue to happen, or they'll replace me and somebody else will continue that. The company should be a long-term aspect. There's a lot of, I would say probably for the last 15, 20 years, a lot of people like, oh, I want to build it up so I can sell it. Okay. Well, to build a sustainable company, it isn't about building up to sell. It's about building a great company. So we've got to think about, how do we build this company that it's going to be here long term? So absolutely, we have to have great cash. We have to have great cash flow. We have to think about other things. I use the example of, okay, let's talk about Blockbuster for a second. So Blockbuster as a strategy, they had a great strategy for probably 20 years. They had retail locations, they had thousands of movies, and that was the place to get them. Well, when technology hit, they didn't keep up, or they didn't see, how do we need to change to keep our company here long term? Where then you've got Netflix, you've got Amazon Prime, you've got Hulu, you got all these others that are now all digital, and you push a button, it's on your phone, it's on your TV, whatever it might be. Blockbuster did not keep up a strategy to maintain the company of the future. Yes, the financials are a part of that, but when we think of long-term strategy, they were too late to the party to even change their strategy. So their financials got so bad so quickly, they couldn't even survive because they didn't think far enough in advance.
Yeah.
And ultimately didn't preserve the company.
Absolutely. It did not preserve the company. You think of General Electric, been around, 150, 200 years. General Electric is in so many things. They have built a company that is sustainable. And yep, they've bought and sold different divisions, but they have a organizational discipline that this company will always be billions and billions in size, because we focus on this and we see the future.
I can relate this back to, Rich, the way I understood it when you think about constituents is, you can have a really good company and extract all the money off the balance sheet and give it to the stakeholders or the investors of the company and leave the company thin. And then COVID hits and you're like, oh crap, we don't have money to sustain the weather. So having a healthy balance sheet, retained earnings on your balance sheet, strong balance sheet keeps the company healthy, but the stakeholders also need to be happy. So they got to get return on their investments. So how do you balance that out with how much you're paying the employees, your pricing to the customers, how much you're investing in customer service? Like, that really makes sense, the constituents. And I think it seems to me, Monty, everything's in 5s with you. So, we have 5 great business, principles of a great business. We have 5 disciplines, and we have 5 constituents. Is there another 5 somewhere, or is that really the?
John, there would have to be 2 more 5s, because that'd be 5 5s.
Good point.
Are there more 5s out there, Monty?
I bet there are, but those are, if I can get those 15 into every business in the world, I'm going to be satisfied.
Yeah,
I love that. So talk about that real quick. So if I'm hearing these 5 things, I'm like, okay, this is great. You talk a lot about having tools with AddingZEROS that entrepreneurs should be using. Can you give us a little snippet or sample of what those tools are and how you execute them with companies, and how, if entrepreneurs wanted to learn more, how they would reach out to get more information on that?
Absolutely. So we are facilitators of a process of exponential growth. And when I say exponential growth, it's not just about revenue and profit again. It's about every aspect of the business. And it's thinking in multiples, not just percentages. We want to grow every aspect, retention, things like that. but we facilitate a process where, as an outsider, well, let me even back up. You know, if let's pretend we're an executive team right here, and John, you're the CEO. Well, the CEO is going to lead the meeting. Where does the CEO take the meeting? Where the CEO wants to take it. Okay, as a facilitator, we are facilitating a process that goes through the 5 disciplines where we do set clear long-term, mid-term, short-term goals, benchmarks, but we're also facilitating a process of reflection on those things to make sure that they become disciplines. Too many times businesses are great. Well, we made the decision, but we're not great at keeping the decision. If you know what I mean. We made the decision, core values are on the wall.
Yeah, accountability.
But we never talk about them again. So we start off with a couple day strategy session where we dig in, we make decisions, or we review decisions that have already been made, what actions to go deeper into the organization to ensure that they become a part of our lives, a part of our discipline. And then we facilitate accountability and coaching sessions twice a month to make sure that we are implementing. And then every quarter, we facilitate a planning session for the next 90 days. We review the previous 90 days, we plan the next 90 days. So we are all aligned and on the same page. And we're communicating what our priorities are, what success looks like, not just within the 3 of us executive team, within our whole company. Every team member wants to know, what does success look like and where are we headed? It's amazing. Even after, one of our facilitators goes through a 2-day session and they share what came out of that 2-day session with their employee base, how excited the team is because they finally have direction on where they're going. It's sad. I don't, small and large companies, there's a lot of employees that don't know where they're going, and it's not the employee's fault. I've mentioned engagement a couple times. This is what I believe. It starts with executive team engagement before anything else. So this is where we are getting the executive team fully engaged with each other. Let's tear down the silos. Let's make sure we're communicating. Let's make sure we're aligned, that our priorities are connected to get the outcome that we're all working towards.
That's right.
So that's the process that we facilitate, and our clients stay with us 4, 5, 6 years because we're an outside facilitator, and we go deep into the organization to help them learn all of this and make it discipline. And we go wide into the executive team to help grow them as executive leaders and managers.
Monte, can you speak, as we kind of look to wrap up the conversation, can you speak directly to the entrepreneurs who are listening and maybe make a suggestion to every one of them to do just one thing next coming out of having heard this whole conversation? If there's one thing that Monte is going to tell you everybody needs to do next, it would be the most worthwhile. It would be what?
Well, this is going to be personal for some folks, but it's not about you. And what I mean by that is, so many times the CEO or the founder or whatever it might be, they're making it about them. And so my encouragement is, make it about the company. You are growing and building a company. And in order to grow and build a company, we have to grow and build our team. We have to grow and build our foundation. And sometimes we have to have a little humbleness to say, I need help. Get that outside facilitator, get that executive development, because most people never go to school to learn how to be a leader or a manager. And so get help from a professional facilitator to take you through this process. You can be great at business, but are you great at building a business?
Powerful. Thank you. If people want to get more of you, how can they find you, Monte?
A couple places, MonteWyatt.com or AddingZerosNow.com. And that's, I just love the name AddingZEROS because it touches every aspect of your life. And I want everybody to add zeros to their lives, not just their business. We should be enjoying life. If we're working too much, it's about us. If we're not enjoying things, we don't have enough zeros there. So add zeros in your business life, in your personal life, and we're only on the earth once.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
You
for
are
the
welcome.
conversation. That was great.
I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Stay with us for a few more minutes while Rich and I break down the podcast.
John, add zeros to your business and life.
Yeah, it's interesting. I automatically went to the financial side. I was like, oh, add zeros. So we're at, and then the name of his book, Pulling Profits Out of a Hat, I automatically went to, okay, we're going to talk about how we can literally make profits today at my instant gratification mindset, right? He's like, oh, like entrepreneurs are going to learn that. And I loved the connection between one of his clients that was a magician who pulls a rabbit out of the hat, and you think he just did that, when in reality, he probably spent a decade learning how to do that so seamlessly that it turned into magic. And the work that goes behind building something, that there's a lot of times you hear people say, oh, you're so lucky, or whatever. And the reality is the work they had to put into it. I don't care if it's a professional athlete who becomes an NHL or NFL player. It's like, oh, you're so lucky you made. Yeah, you know how lucky I was, how hard I had to work to get here, or a successful entrepreneur or business. There's a lot behind it. And so it started making sense to me that if you don't build the right foundation in all of the 15 areas we really talked about here in today's call, I think those 15, although they were in different categories, are pretty strong when you put them all together.
It's funny you say that you're so lucky part. I was recommended a podcast by John Maxwell, who you brought up on this podcast.
Yep.
And I listened to it yesterday while I was driving somewhere. And one of the things that I remembered from you saying that you're so lucky part is John Maxwell talked about people who say, I want to do what you do, John. And his response is, but do you want to do what I did? In order to be able to do what I do.
Yep.
And, to your point, at the end of the 10 years and you pull the magic out of the hat, and at the end of 10 years, people are like, I want to do that. I want to do magic tricks. And it's like, do you want to practice for 10 years? Like, it's not easy to just pull the rabbit out. You got to practice for 10 years. And part of the practice that Monte shared with us, man, I love the organizational disciplines. We didn't get into it, but I'm a little bit of a wordsmith. The idea of organizational disciplines. They're not organizational, sometimes do it. They're not organizational inconsistencies. They're not organizational suggestions. I assume Monte picked the word disciplines because you have to be disciplined to do all 5 of them: strategy, business development, people, execution, and mission. I got to say, John, in our business, I feel like we're really good with several of those, but one that we could get better at is strategy.
Yep.
Is where are you taking things long term, having that vision, although that's not in here, but I assume that's part of strategy. But then, what are the big levers that are going to take you there? I just feel like our organization at CertaPro, we can work on strategy with our entrepreneurs maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, that's great. I think everybody needs to work on strategy a little bit more because it's so important. I think it's
thank you for bailing me out there.
No, it's native with every company because every company has this year objectives. You have to go get what's going on now, especially in a global pandemic, and you're trying to figure out what's going on in the business. But the practice of strategy, the discipline of strategy, not just the now strategy, but the 5-10 year strategy of where are we going with this, and making sure the whole organization is clear on that and is able to articulate it. But you have to have carriers in your business or influencers in your business that really know the strategy and know where the company is going long term, so they're bought into everything. So I really love that connection you brought back. But everybody needs to have these disciplines. But I think one of the big things is if I was an entrepreneur coming off this conversation, one of the things that I am an entrepreneur coming off this conversation, so one of the things I'd like to do is take these 15 things and grade myself. Take a company, right, that you work with or that you run, and grade yourself. How am I doing on the strategy or the discipline of strategy? business development, people, execution, mission. How am I doing relative to the constituents? Rate yourself there. And then how am I doing overall as it relates to being a great business on sustainable, predictable, stable, consistent? And I rate myself. I don't know, use a 1 through 10 score or an ABC score.
If I may recommend the simplicity of red, yellow, green. So for our entrepreneurs who are listening, if you have those 15 things that you write down, just go, are you red, yellow, or green? Obviously, stoplight. Red is you're not great at it. Green is don't need to worry about it. Yellow is could do some work.
Yeah, that's a really actionable component that you just articulated. Like create yourself a little, stoplight scorecard of these 15 things. Where are you? And on the greens, what else are you going to do to keep it there? On the yellows, how can you push it there? And evaluate yourself on a quarterly basis, annual basis. Probably takes a little bit longer to move those needles, but that would be a great thing to do because I do believe he captures a lot in those 15 items. And I do believe that once you have green in all of these areas, you can withstand storms. You can withstand dips in client sales. You can withstand a whole bunch of things because you have the buy-in, not only as the entrepreneur, but your whole team is bought into everything that you're doing. So I truly understand, looking at those 15 things, how you can add zeros everywhere, not just the revenue, not just the profits, but employee retention, employee engagement, customer satisfaction, all the different metrics that count.
And by the way, on the red, yellow, green, we do that in our business. And for those listening who may go do that, know it's okay to mark it as red. That's okay. That's not an indictment of some sort. That doesn't mean that you can't move it. And then the other piece of advice I'd have is you're not going to go from red to green. You're only trying to advance it up one step. So if you mark one of the 15 things red, just look for what do you need to do that's a most likely thing that's going to make it yellow next time you're going to come back and do the red, yellow, green.
You know what? I'd actually take it a step further, Rich, just as I'm thinking about this.
Yeah.
I would encourage entrepreneurs to survey their leadership teams
360 style
versus themselves doing it. I'd have their leadership team do it, culminate the results, and see what they're saying. Because I know a heck of a lot of leaders, and I've been there myself as well, where I think our strategy is very clear. We know exactly what we're doing, but that doesn't necessarily cascade through the organization. So I think even doing a little bit, getting a small focus group of 5 to 6 key leaders and having them individually do it, maybe even bring it together as a group to identify what it is versus the entrepreneur even doing it themselves is maybe even another way to take it.
Well, there's an emotional intelligence play in that too of where are my blind spots, where I may be clear on the strategy, where is that being under communicated? And you're right, if the leader's the only one doing it, you'd rate it as green, but everybody else is rating it as red. And you think as a leader, because you said it once and you were maybe really clear once, everybody should know it.
That's right. And
often it takes a little more repetition, sometimes nauseating repetition, to really have organizational clarity that would rate these things green. So that's a great snap.
Yeah, absolutely. To change subjects, there's one last thing that I think connected with me in this conversation was, again, going back to that chart, that graph of competency and commitment. And if you have an employee that's not performing, the first thing you should do, the first thing you and I used to always do is, well, are they not committed or are they not competent? What is it? Because it's got to be one of the two. There's some reason they're not performing. They're either not into it or they don't know what they're doing. And if you evaluated, even in an exit process, where that employee is and why they're leaving the organization, you may be able to very well assess the leadership and or management capabilities of that direct supervisor to say, okay, all these people are leaving because they're not committed. That supervisor may be a good manager, not very good leader. Let's give them leadership training. Or the reverse, where they're very committed, but they're not competent. Maybe they need more management skills. And I've definitely seen a lot of leaders in the years, I'm sure you have as well, where the employee, the manager, the supervisor, the leader says exactly what Monte said. Well, I don't want to micromanage. So they have this negative perception of micromanage. So they let the employee do what they're doing, and the employee isn't competent in doing what they're doing and or isn't committed because the manager's like, well, I don't want to spend too much time with them. I don't want them to feel like I'm micromanaging. They're two different things.
Yeah.
Leadership and management.
And what you're referencing there is actually Ken Blanchard's leading situationally or situational leadership.
Yep.
And it's diagnosing where the learner in this case is on competence and commitment, and then selecting the appropriate leadership style based on their competence and commitment in that particular task.
Yeah.
So it'd be looking at like the leadership tasks as totally different than the management tasks. Although Monty said there is some carryover, there's some that are separate. So it would be taking a management task of maybe skill-based versus Monty kind of defined the leadership stuff as passion-based, and then looking at the competence and commitment in something skill-based and selecting, do you in fact want to delegate? Which is the one where you go, not only am I not going to micromanage, I'm going to delegate, not abdicate, but delegate, which means there's some follow-up to say, how did that go? Did you actually do it? So there's a whole conversation. That may be something we want to do in a quarterly conversation around leading situationally to be able to work through.
Yeah, I was just thinking myself, if we can't get Ken Blanchard to come on to our podcast, I may have to interview you on this, because this subject of situational leadership and that Ken Blanchard chart of how do you lead based on the competency and commitment graph, are you leading, are you managing, plays all into this. And I think it could be extremely valuable refresher for myself in addition to our listeners. So great conversation with Monty, and let's add some zeros.
Let's do it.